Hey everyone, it's Kai, and Brush with Legends set 2 of Overdress is coming out very, very soon, right? It's coming out like this week soon. It's surprising because everyone, or a lot of people, not everyone, a lot of people, including me, thought it was, you know, still down the line, but, you know, sneak previews come up and it's like, whoa, better shape it up. So I did this before as well. I usually do these preliminary decks at the beginning of each JP set. And then when the EN release comes out, I release an updated version of all the decks that I did before to kind of go through the lens of all the testing that is done in the JP format and the testing that I've done. And then we kind of see the changes and you can have a better base going into the English format on what decks should look like or what decks you want to, you know, have a nice basis for it, right? So these are kind of more streamlined decks. But again, English players, you're doing well. You're doing well. Your decks are also very innovative too, right? Innovative as well. And we've seen a lot of innovations in the English side, especially last set where we had like, you know, English Bruce, I think was way better done. And Orfist as well was way better done on the English side than in JP. So we have this is going to be a long set, right? We're going to be having this set for a very long time until like, well, English Lyrical Monastery is going to come out. But set 3 is like still in December, so we've got a lot of time to innovate and play with the set and kind of make the builds even better and compress it in such a way that it's like perfect, right? So let's get started. I've had enough talking. I'm using CFV Plus here because it's just really good for making these videos. It makes everything nice and easy. But I will definitely post these lists on the code on Decklog as well, so you can kind of look at it in a big format too. But first of all, let's look at Nirvana. Nirvana is the deck that has kind of been going around a lot, you know, its main character deck. It got Urja, which makes everything nice. The big change I have with this is putting in better boosters. You know, in my previous build, I ran like 4 Togashirashi, and he's not really a good booster. He's a 7k power guy, and that's not a good number to hit, right? This boosting Trickstar is a 12k, and there's no Excel decks. There's no Excel decks in Overdress, so it basically hits grade 2s only. So we've added more boosters in the deck. Now, the reason why before the original like builds that I've had in the previous video, they were built around the idea that it's going to be a big Bruce format because Bruce is very strong. So we have to find ways to play around the Leonard kind of multi-attack. But now you can kind of change that philosophy up, going, who cares about Bruce, right? If you face a Bruce and they go first, well, congratulations, you've probably lost the game. So instead of trying to make your deck worse in playing against this specific matchup, maybe you should just make your deck better against every other matchup and pray to the gods for that matchup against Bruce that you go first so you actually have a chance. So yeah, now we're putting in boosters. Some boosters, a lot of people have chosen to run Aruna, which gets power, 5k power when it boosts to grade 0. Or gives us grade 0, 5. Either way, it hits a good number. It hits 18, and with Persona Ride, it's like 28. But I decided to go a slightly bigger brain here. Is we're running Kizan Reiji. This guy is that once per turn, you may, it's an act effect. Once per turn, Counterblast Soul Blast 1. Choose one of your opponent's rear guards in the same column and retire. So it kind of locks down a column, makes your opponent think if they want to commit more cards to that column, because those cards are not safe unless they're a facade. But it's just also with boost. It's an 8k boost. It's nice, it sticks around, has an additional effect. It can spend your soul. So in the original builds, we were running 4 Togashirashi, but turns out that spends, you know, you don't have a lot of soul spend. Like Urja is a soul blast 2, right? So you're like, wow, you're gonna spend so much. But in reality, how many Urges that you actually play with the soul blast 2 effect is kind of like not that many. You're still waiting for that perfect time to do it, but other times, you could just overdress for a 20k base, and that's already good enough, right? So we cut down on one of these Togashirashis to 3, but you still have kind of excess soul, so we've kind of added an extra Virina as well, because Virina is still an okay card, right? When it's in overdress, it's kind of a 20k beater by himself, but can become 30 with the Nirvana skill that you can more willingly spend. So, and being able to just Soul Blast 2 randomly get like a retire is not bad, right? It's still a soul spender, but Kizan Reiji also solves that kind of soul spender kind of thing. Also, we added Tension Steads in. 2 Tension Stead is not bad because this deck is still kind of reliant on Persona Riding because you want to get that nice Persona Ride turn where your Tricksters get the Persona Ride power, and then you just do your multi-attacks with Persona Ride, so you're like, you know, double dipping on the powers a lot. So getting Persona Ride is pretty important. So we're running 2 of these, and since you have urges to countercharge, the counterblast one is not heavy. Basically, if you resolve urges counter charge effect like twice a game, you're pretty much set, right? The entire game is just like, you have no counterblast issues for the entire game. So I think apart from that, you still run 4 arcs. You can see there's no Valiente in the deck as well. I personally think Valiente is a very low value card, because what the actual text of Valiente reads is that it's just a 13k. That's it. The rest of that text is irrelevant and has overdress. That's it. So it's good against like a prison deck because it's 13, and then you put a Trickster behind it that's 18, and that hits numbers, right? With Nirvana, you know, 28, that's a good number to hit. Sooner right, that's 38. But apart from that, you know, overdressing a Valiente is always low value, in my opinion. It's just not good. The value of Valiente is just not great, so I've personally just cut him altogether. When you run more 2s, run more Virenas, all your overdress needs are here. Boosters, Soul, done, easy deck, and then we just run the fronts. I think a lot of decks have actually just cut 1 crit for the extra front, because yeah, 20k shields are really good. Really good. So instead of just cutting draws for fronts, they cut the draws and like 1 crit for the front. So yeah, nice. 4 fronts, 7 crits, and that's pretty much the deck. All right. Next, we have good old Eugene. Now, there's some changes to this Eugene deck as well. One thing is that now you don't really run Sunlight Punishment at all, because you have good enough cards that retire. We have Long Boy. We have the Gibra Braccio. All right. I hate dinosaur names. I hate the best dinosaur name is Tribash, because it's like the easiest. But Gibra Braccio, or like the Long Boy, as you know, basically carries this deck on his long neck. It is a counter blastless retire, and it's the cost is Soul Blast 1 and rest to retire one of your opponent's rear guards. That is not a cost. That is not a cost, because at the start of your battle phase, if your opponent has 1 or less rear guards, you can stand the unit and it gets 5k. So no cost, pretty much, I'd like to say. You can play kind of like a grindy game now, where you have a lot more retires than usual and just pop them. You have Kizan Reiji, which is also another way to start a retire chain. Again, your Eugene still starts retire chains. But apart from that, you know, the things that benefit, you totally cut a Nigel for Idris, because Idris is just better. It's the Counterblast 1, and you get to pick between 2 effects. So you can give this unit 10k, or you can put this unit into Soul and retire one of your opponent's grade 2 or greater units. So it's not bad, right? Generally, they have intercepts that you can pop. But if they don't, then you just don't use it. You can just get power. You can use your Long Boy to retire those 1s, you know, Eugene to retire 1s. So basically everything is really, really good now. And, you know, you still run your Shiga Manago for your just extra calls if you want. But if you don't want to, just put into Soul. But you also running 2 Gojo is not bad, all right? 2 Gojo is not bad, because this deck still can use a bit of Counterblast, but now your Gojo can countercharge when it boosts something and it hits. So makes empty space as well, so your next turn you can do things. But countercharge 1 is not bad. It is actually not bad. So running like 2 Gojos, I think, is a pretty good place for it. So yeah, we'll have to boost the Vanguard, sorry. So, you know, just put it behind Eugene, and yeah, you know, if it hits once, I think you're kind of set. I think you're kind of set. Apart from that, we're still running 15k beaters, because 15k beaters are good. And the trigger lineup is kind of weird. So remember back then, you had like the idea of like 6-6, where you're on 6 crits and 6 draws. Well, now there's like a different kind of lineup I like playing, which is like 6-3-3, which is where, you know, you like the fronts, but you also like draws, because your deck kind of wants some draws. So you become 6-3-3, you run 6 crits because crits are good, but then you run like 3 cards that draw and 3 fronts. And the 3 fronts are just fronts, right? And 3 cards that draw are 2 draw triggers and like 1 over trigger, because that draws. So 6-3-3 is kind of what I like to call it. One of the 3s is deceptively a bigger 3 than the others, because it's an over trigger. And then they're just 4 heals. So I kind of like this lineup. Been testing it out and it's been okay. So yeah. All right, so next we have is Dragonic Overlord. This one kind of changed a bit, I guess. I cut out more of the attackers and then put in more defensive cards. Well, I don't actually know. It's just I think I'll put the same amount, but the key difference is we have Tencha Steads and Togashi Rashi, right? Generate soul to spam your Nahalems, right? To spam your Nahalems. And then you have your Tencha Steads. Now, Tencha Stead requires you to hit something, or the attack that this unit boost hit something, you can use it, and then search for Dragonic Overlord. So every turn you have Dragonic Overlord Persona Ride pressure, because it can't really guard regards, right? Because Dragonic Overlord stops your opponent from calling units to their guarding circle when it attacks a regard. So, well, not call units. Just call any card, but you know, most of the things you call units. Orders don't go to the guardian circle; they just go straight to the bin. So they work, but you know, that's very, very limited, right? Most of the time you're hitting. So when your Tencha Stead boost and hits, bam, search for a Dragonic Overlord, thin the deck, get a Persona Ride next turn, and you're pretty good. So yeah, Tencha Stead pretty good, and you know, you've got Gojos to countercharge, so overall the plus minus is all right as well. And then the lineup I'm running here is, again, it's a 6-3-3, which is it just works out. But overall the deck is pretty much straightforward, build itself, very easy to build. Right. Moving on to Dark States, we have Bruce. This is the dirtiest deck in the entire format at the moment. It's just really good, right? It's just really, really good. I don't know what else to say. The big change here is that we're running Helldives and we cut some Edens, and the Helldives, at first, you know, I thought playing like an order down, 10k front row, that's cool, but it's a bit low value. But you can make huge power turns, right? Huge power turns that are basically impossible to guard. So when you go first and you go to Final Rush first, you just play that, you combo your Helldive with the Persona Ride, and it's basically 5 attacks of huge power lines that your opponent pretty much just like 3-card guard, and like that's happening, right? This is Overdress. You don't get that many cards, so you can just absolutely dominate an opponent. You still have the combos, right? You still have your Leonard multi-attack combos, but do you really need to multi-attack when you're hitting like 5 huge swings? You generally don't. It's not really required. Like this is just absolutely insane. But when you do, right? When you do combo this with Leonard, sure, you get to hit a lot, you get to soul charge a lot, and you can call free stuff too. So overall, it's still like you have to think of, before when you looked at this deck, you went, okay, this Leonard combo is absolutely insane. This is going to be the main piece of this deck. But the actual real combo is just Helldive plus Persona Ride and bam. That's the main meat and bones combo, right? So I don't know what to say. This deck is pretty ridiculous. When you go first with this deck, I think you pretty much win. If you go second with this deck, then you probably win, unless you're playing in like a Bruce Mirror or a Bastion just smacks you in the face and you die. So yeah, really strong deck. You can even cut more Edens to run more Acrobat Presenters, just to increase your soul charge capability. So just think about that. But I've seen people run like, I've actually seen people run more Edens nowadays than before. A lot of people are running just 4 Leonards. But you know, you could even cut like a Proto Bulb if you're afraid of your soul, just to add more presenters, or 1 Doba. The Doba is also very, very good. It generates soul, gives power, which is nice. The trigger lineup, I personally think you can run any trigger lineup you want. You can literally just any trigger lineup you want. I've seen people run 7 draws, right? It's no crits. 7 draws, like 4 fronts kind of thing. I've seen people just run like 8 crit, 3 front, anything. I'm running the 6-3-3. Right, just because, you know, I like it. Fronts are great. I'm also running the Dark States Overtrigger, which is kind of a departure from before, where we were running the Olbaria. That's because, like, the Dark States Overtrigger, sure, it looks like it's only good in the first 3 turns of the game or whatever, right? But you'll get to a situation where your power lines are hitting so big that your Vanguard column is actually the only column that is the smallest. Right, your side Marjorie column's like 51 or something like that. Your Vanguard's hitting for like, oh, it's only a 33, or it's a 41 with boost or something like that. So they're kind of more incentivized to either no guard the Vanguard, well, not no guard, like double guard the Vanguard column and save the nulls, right? So at that point, if they're kind of manually guarding the Vanguard column, getting a crit with an Overtrigger seems pretty good. It seems pretty good. So went back to playing the Dark States Overtrigger. It basically functions as like the 3rd draw and the 7th crit. But since like you'll get into those situations where your opponent really has to, they don't have enough to guard, right? You know, they have to save their nulls for the sides. So or if they spend their null on the Vanguard, if you get a crit anyway, it's still the same issue. So they have to save the null for the side. Your Vanguard column can randomly trigger the Overtrigger and win. So that's why I went back to the Dark States Overtrigger. Also, if you trigger this early, it's like infinite GGs, right? It's just big GG right there. Nothing they can do. And yeah, that's it. I've seen people run Mabel as well, the one that gives your Vanguard triple drive. So that just adds extra pressure. I think it's not a bad choice, right? You maybe cut some Edens for the Mabel, and then yeah, boom, random Overtrigger, you win. See you next year, right? So busted deck, absolutely busted. Enjoy this for 3 months. On the flip side here, we have Baromagnes, probably one of the most unupdated decks in the entire format. This is basically, this deck got like, instead of 1 set of support, it got like 0.5 of a set of support, in my opinion. It's just like, it has the same game plan from before, except it's still just as fragile, and then everything else got better. The only changes we really have here are the Crimson Expellers. This basically replaces Gungan Ram, because this is a grade 2 that you can play out early and beat with. So yeah, it's alright, right? It's okay. It's an okay card. We replace Crawling with Abnormality Extraction, because this one is a Soul Charge 3, but you can kind of make it a Soul Charge 2 and salvage something from Soul, so you can salvage Perfect Guards to help increase your longevity. But yeah, it's like 0.5, like instead of 1 set of support, it's 0.5 of support in my opinion. You're still running draws because you kind of want to dig and get more cards. So it means you can't really run fronts, but that means your defensives are kind of bad. But I guess, yeah, Baromagnes. I think, I don't know. They're like, when you look at how strong the other Dark Stage deck is, why are you bothering with this? On the flip side, it is going to be very cheap. I think it's still going to be one of the cheapest decks out there. So yeah, cheap budget deck, right? Cheap budget deck. Moving on to another deck that really hasn't changed much as well is Bastion. As you can see, this is kind of the most standard build out there for Bastion. You run 4 form-ups. That's it. Cut a Crocodile, because you kind of want to be slightly more conservative with your 3s. Because this is actually one of the few decks that can compete with Bruce, and against Bruce you still don't want to commit a full field really crazily. So you can still play a conservative game, but still put on a lot of pressure. So just running like a front row of 3s is usually good enough, and then you can commit the one behind somewhere to use your form up, and preferably it's a refluke so you can put more power in, right? So that's basically the big change. I've seen people run Painkiller Angels to be able to boost and then pop that card back just because it's like a Soul Blast retire to draw, so you can kind of still make empty spaces. But overall, you know, this deck just works. It's just solid. It works. You'll never miss. Of course, with a triple drive, you know, the Painkiller Angels hurt less, but just kill him, right? Just play 3s, kill him, and then when you feel like you've got it, drop your Dark Strains, drop your whole field, bam, slam and jam, and then you replace your draws with fronts. That's it. So Bastion players really happy. Basically no changes to your deck. It's similar to Baromagnes, except your deck is actually way better, because it's just, yeah, it's literally no changes and still one of the best decks in the entire format. So yeah, good job. Moving on to another deck that also got a lot of support is Hexaorb. This is very similar to the list that I played, that I made previously in my preliminary list, except I cut 2 of the Capoldos, because Capoldo sounds good on paper, right? It's like you counterblast 1 and rest another Regard to call something out, and then it's like a +1, right? It's a +1. You can get Persona Rides, and you know, next turn you have more cards in the field, kind of thing. The reality is that I hardly use this card at all. The rest is actually super annoying. It's in the worst of time. It basically, you have this card and you're like, if you ran 4 of this, you have this card, you're like, I really don't want to play it because I'd much rather play Owine or Oween, because Oween's just better, right? It's just better. And then otherwise, like, I don't want to rest anything, right? Because what is there to rest? Usually you don't really place that many cards on the field because you don't have to as Hexaorb. Your front row is cool. There might be a booster behind your Vanguard, and that's the thing. If that's the thing of resting, then it's actually a big neg for you because you want your booster ready to boost and be able to like put power in it so you can randomly break through to the pass, right? Remember, if you put power on your booster, it adds the power to your attack. So if they put down like a 15k shield or like just like a if they don't go 2 to pass you and you get a trigger, you can put the trigger on the Vanguard and then the Hexa will power on the rear guard, and that is a 2 to pass. They're dead. So they have to guard properly or they have to waste perfect guards on that. So having a booster behind your Vanguard is very, very important. So overall, Capoldo just didn't really work out. Having a higher amount of grade 3s is still kind of good, right? You know, 10 with the 2 Reflux. So the Reflux can refund. This is a pretty soul heavy deck. It's a very soul heavy deck. So the Reflux work. And also in those weird situations where when you do your ride line and you ride your Hexaorb and Pentagleam and look at the top 3 cards, like, oh, there's an over trigger there. If you have a Reflux in hand, that is another twin drive, right? Sometimes you'd see the over trigger and go, oh, I have to commit like 2 2s, right? And you're basically, oh, single drive. So lame. But you know, with more grade 3s, you have a high chance of having them in your hand and go, oh nice, twin drive, sick, +6 that turn. So overall, yeah, the Reflux still good, adds soul. Painkillers kind of counters the boost matchup in a way, but overall just nice filtering. And then again, we've still got the fronts and crits, but I've kind of valued the crits a bit more just because, you know, critting's good, making those lethal numbers. Now moving on to probably what will be the worst deck in the entire format. You're probably looking at this list and going, what the hell is this abomination? And I'm going to tell you, Phantom Blaster Dragon is not good. It is very not good. Especially if you build the deck in the way that they intended you to build it. It does nothing. The deck just is absolute garbage and does nothing. Maha, unfortunately, is not a very good card. It is Soul Blast, retire for a chance to get a 1, right? Or 1 or less. So you might not even get it, all right? You might not even hit, you might not even get the card. At worst, you like do that and get nothing for it. You're very incentivized then to run a lot of grade 1s, and they don't do anything. They just don't do anything. That's the reality of it. It doesn't do anything. Like, I'm gonna tell you, probably the best card in the entire Phantom Blaster lineup, and that is Blaster Javelin. Do you know why? Because it's 10k. You know, it's 10k on your turn. That means it's a 10k booster and it's a 10k attacker. That's pretty sad. That's pretty sad. You can say like the best card is Brana, but let's be honest, right? You're gonna be, if you retire with Phantom Blaster Dragon, what are you doing? Right? What are you doing? Like, if you look at these other cards, Charon, it's a 7k. That's awful. That doesn't hit anything, right? That doesn't hit anything. And then, okay, sure, it calls a card, but that card dies at the end of turn. So you have to sack it, or you have to like not care about it. It's just everything about it, everything about this deck is just so messy, right? The support it has, it's like, oh, thank God we have a Brana, so our deck is not, it's like our below average deck is finally only slightly below average, right? It doesn't do enough. So this deck is radically different from the deck that you saw in the preliminary list, because I just went, screw it, we're making a stupid high roll meme list, and yeah, you'll probably look at this and go, why don't you play Bastion? And that's my question to you. Why don't you just play Bastion? Right? Why? They're both Kena Sanctuary. They run a lot of the same cards, but this card is just infinitely worse. But this card has, this deck is infinitely worse than Bastion, but it has more high roll opportunities, I guess. So you can play this as like set 1 Eugene, right? Set 1 Eugene got some okay support, so it's not the worst deck anymore. But you can play this as set 1 Eugene. So what are some crazy plays you can do? Well, if you use your Phantom Blaster Dragon effect, you can retire your whole back row and get a crit and retire 2 of your opponent's stuff. But then, you know, when you drive check this card, you suddenly get a card that can boost your side columns. How incredible, right? That is so cool. And you can surprise your opponent. They're like, oh, he doesn't have a back row, but surprise, surprise, now I do. How good is that? And then randomly, you can go, oh, I run so many grade 3s. Let's play form up on my Phantom Blaster Dragon. And yeah, that's cool. So you could just do this. You can play Aldens because you want to run a grade 3s. And you don't use enough CB anyway, so you might as well just draw cards. You're on Fasado because you might as well, you know, to use for Aldens. Yeah, but then form up on your critical Phantom Blaster Dragon. Oh, that is incredible. And then this gives you more chance to trigger Cortez to be able to call outs and boost. And then randomly, right? You know, in the early game, your Blaster Javelin can call a grade 3. And then next turn you can bash with that grade 3. So that's not bad too. Your Blaster Dark can do a twin drive and call out 2 Cortezes. And they could just beat face. Like... yeah, stupid high roll opportunities, right? And then once this thing's job is done, because, you know, after it gets called out from a trigger, it doesn't have boost from the next turn. Just sack it. Just get rid of it, right? It's done its job. Just get rid of it with Phantom Blaster Dragon, and you're set. So this is gonna be my tip for you. Don't build Phantom Blaster Dragon. Right? Don't build it. You could buy the cards and look at them, and go, oh yeah, these cards look pretty. But apart from that, you know, that's kind of actually you could build this deck. And then go, wait, I have all the pieces for a Bastion deck. I might as well just build that. And that's that, right? You know, you could buy a Star deck and you have a Bastion deck as well. So that is the biggest plus for building a Phantom Blaster Dragon deck. You could basically throw away this Ride Chain, throw these cards away, throw away the Charon, throw away the Cortez and Prana, but just buy a Star deck and you're ready to go. Bastion Star deck. They're coming out. They're getting reprinted, right? So I think some places have a lot of prints, so that's fine. But yeah, if you build this deck, you could build a Bastion deck. But I think that's enough ranting for now. Let's move on. So here we have, right, the new Magnolia deck that I've been playing, and you know what? I really like the Kuchi Ursula combo, right? What Kuchi is that it's a 15k that cannot be ridden or called other than to the back row center circle. And that means you can only put it behind the Vanguard circle. But what this means is, like, you could play this out on turn 1 and smash with like a 23k Vanguard column, and they just cannot guard that at all, right? Pretty sick. On the other hand, you can have Ursula, and what she does is that, you know, when you want to move cards, you can also move them across rows. So basically, you can move a Kuchi anywhere on the field, and it's just a 15k beater. You could, with this card, you can just move anything anywhere you want, right? She also has a second effect, so the units in front of this unit cannot be chosen by your opponent's card effects. So yeah, if you put it in the back row and you have a card in front of it, they can't retire that card. So you could technically put a Kuchi in front of this Ursula, and it's very hard to attack into it because he's 15k, but then they also can't get rid of it very easily because it's 15k. So overall, I really like these two cards. These two cards, just very funny. You can move things around, it's super fun. It's super fun, right? Also, the other good card that's been really good is just Wild Intelligence, right? Wild Intelligence mills 3 off the top, and then you can call a card. But if you have Magnolia, you can call 2 cards instead of 1. So you don't have to call cards that are from those cards that you milled. You call any cards. So, you know, that's why we're running lower copies of Ginosla, because, you know, you don't really need that card early game at all. It's basically your finisher. But when you need it, bam, Wild Intelligence comes out, get it out, get another card that you need. You're sweet. Danma Inaru works very well just on your non-Persona Ride turns, where you can just at least make 2 attacks from the back, right? So yeah, it's a multi-attack deck. This is the real world now, all right? We're not talking about 3 attack decks. This is 2021 multi-attack supreme combo deck. We also run the Elephant again, because the Elephant is just one of the only ways you can Soul Charge, and this deck does use a bit of Soul Blast. But if you're able to Soul Charge, that's great. If you don't, then use Ursula and move him around to somewhere where you can. So yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. We're running more lattices as well, just because it's a back row, you know, 10k attacker, gets soul blast, get 10k, but you have soul charge, so nice. We still run a high draw count. I'm running 5 draw with so basically it's like 6 draw cards, but no, actually this is a super trigger, so it's every trigger, so it's a, you know, it's actually 6 draw, 7 crit, 1 front, and 5 heals. So yeah, overall this deck is actually pretty fun, very good, pretty fun. Surprisingly, right? Surprisingly, you can just run the normal ride chain as well, or you can run the Zorgnolia ride chain. If you want to run Zorgnolia, then you probably run more orders. You'd be running like maybe 3 more Ghost Chase or Condensate or whatever. Any of it's fine. But overall, this deck's really fun now with the new additions. You know, Dama Inaru making everything work. But then this combo is actually really fun. I don't know. I just like some sort of Magnolia, one of the really good decks in this set, in my opinion. And you might say, oh, loses Leonard, dude. Everything loses to Leonard. Right? Don't feel bad. Just pretend Leonard doesn't exist, and when you see it, just go drink some tea. Right? Drink some tea. The other Stoicheia deck is Zorga, and I don't know, I've been playing Zorga, and it feels alright. Like, it feels alright. There's some things that, you know, I've changed my mind a bit about, and that is like regurgitation, right? I kind of feel like I don't like this card as much, just because this card doesn't give you power. It's a grade 3 as well, so you can't use it early, and it's got some pretty terrible matchups, right? So this effect is that you have to choose any player's regards, retire, and choose up to 1 card of the same grade as that card from your drop, and call it to the regard circle. But if you Alchemagic, you can choose up to 2. So you can kind of call a field. But the whole, like, if you want to be super greedy with this card, you want to retire your opponent's cards to get 2 on your side of the field to make big swings, right? But the problem is, when you're in a format where there's a deck called Bastion, and you're a deck that doesn't really run a lot of 3s, it feels really bad. It feels really bad. You can only call out your Zorgas, which is why I run 100 Hydra Rail, just for that specific matchup. But also, since this card doesn't give any power, you really want to combo this with a Persona Ride turn. So that kind of makes slightly more inconsistencies there. And otherwise, you want to combo this with Grief and Despair, but that means it's a 2 CB turn. And if you want to use Zorga's Fate as a 3 CB turn, of course you can lower the cost with the Headhunters, but how many Headhunters can you play, right? So overall, this card has been underperforming, and I might want to cut some, maybe, and run slightly more. I still rate Spiritual Condensation quite high, because it's basically free. It's a Soul Blast that combos with Hendrina, so yeah, it's basically free. I still like Agony, because this combos gets basically free cards on the field. I like this Overcoming the Unnatural Death card, because it is that those rare situations where you're totally bricking an order, this can save you, right? This can save you. You look at your hand, your next turn, I'm not getting any more, I don't have any more orders. If I combo with this, I can get like 2 orders back, and I can continue my Alchemagic chain. Otherwise, at worst, you get back Ghost Chases, because it can. And then your Ghost Chase can get you back some key cards, and that's pretty good. So overall, that's some of the change I did. I also added in 1 Shark, because the problem with this deck is that it's a 3 attack deck. So you have situations where your opponent has like 4 cards, but you can kind of go, all right, since I'm a 3 attack deck, I'm very easy to map out on my attacks. So they can like 2 card guard one of my attacks, then null, right? But with the Shark, if you do it that way, they actually cannot guard one of the cards, because they can't go like, you know, 2 card guard, then they have to 2 card guard the Shark, right? So the Shark can put in some work, but I don't run 2 of it, because you kind of, it's just a 10k beta until that situation, because you don't want to waste your soul, right? So overall, only running 1 Shark, running 1 Hydra Rail just for, you know, slightly extra grade 3s, and the 1s are like, you know, your 1s are still not great at all. I'm also just running fronts and crits, no draws, but I think you can run draws if you really want to. You don't really, I don't think you really deck out, because the deck now just kind of calls a full field and just bashes. It's like an Orfist deck, though I think this is slightly more inconsistent, just because of the reliance on the orders still. Also, it feels like your columns hit really big. They hit as big as Bruce, but you don't hit as many times as Bruce. It's like a huge neg. It's a huge neg. So yeah, overall, I think you can add in maybe some more aggression. I was thinking of just running like a couple of Eladias. I really wanted to put on some early game push, but this is kind of the list I've kind of settled on with. So I like it. I like it. All right, so now let's talk about Orfist. Rank 8 time, right? Orfist. Now, this list is very different from the beginning Orfist list I showed, because, you know, through testing, you know, things happen. I saw some of the lists running Islate. That's the one that, you know, at the end of each turn, you know, both players have a retire card. Didn't really, I don't know, I really didn't really like it. But we're going with this thing called the World Engine. All right, the World. Now, what is the World Engine? Well, you can see here, let's look at the World cards that I'm running. I'm still running 4 of the Hollowing Moonlit Night. And the original build, I ran a lot of the Eroding Moonlight, just because, you know, when you think about it, right? Counterblast 1, to call a 15k token that bashes face on turn 2, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. You can... Bashing is good. Rushing early is good, especially for a 3 attacker deck. But after that, are you really going to use that? Maybe not, right? Maybe not. You'd just rather CB2 get 3 tokens, because that's a plus. So we cut this all the way down to 1, right? Because the play is that your ride line can always search this out. And that means you can always get that 15k early. But then after that, you're probably not going to need it. You're not going to need it, right? Now, why are we still running a lot of these in the darkness, nobody knows world orders? Why do we need this? It's just a Soul Blast 1 retire, right? But, you know, with Alvaderd, we already have retire. So why do we need this? Well, you know, we can run more retire, but also because we're running 4 Merisma. Now, what is Merisma? Merisma is just when it comes to play on the Regard Circle, look at the top 3 cards from your deck, and then you can choose 1 world from among them, and then put it into your hand. And then put the rest of the bottom in any order that you want. So, hopefully when you play this, you can search an order, and it's just, you play the card on the field for free. And the order can, you know, more retires, you know, more retires fine, or just hand filter, that's fine too. But yeah, you can play this early and kind of just rush with it while getting orders into your hand, and then kind of giving yourself more information because you know what's at the bottom of your deck, so you can slightly know what's in the rest of your deck. Of course, if you put in like 2 triggers at the bottom, then you feel bad, and then, you know, if you just keep on playing them, put more triggers in, then you kind of know that you're screwed, right? But at the same time, you could not put them, and then you'd be in a way better position. So it's just a wash like that. But being able to possibly refund itself while grabbing orders out of your deck is pretty good, I think. And then you run a Corpa. Now, why are you running this over Baromagnes? Right? Because this can actually just get you a counter charge while staying on the field, right? So it basically means that, you know, your CB2 to get 3 tokens is actually just a CB1. You refund a cost, become CB1, and then you can freely just spam your Alvaderd's effect, your Thumberinos effect, just use all your Shadow Army tokens, and the only thing on the field that you probably have is like 1 card in each column, and that's pretty good against like a Leonard or whatever, right? So overall, I think I like this. I like this just because it kind of stays on the field, so you can kind of repeatedly use the effect every turn, and then your world kind of just cycles through. And yeah, that's pretty much the whole list. And we're running fronts, and that's all. So overall, this is a pretty cool list, I think. Nice idea with the Merisma, and then with the worlds like that. Now moving on to the last list for the day, we have Prison, but this is this new interesting fun tech that is kind of called a Prison World. Now, normally the order you run in Prison is the new one that forces them to call or send a card from their hand to Prison. They have 4 more cards, but we have you know, Corroding Moonlight, the card or Eroding Moonlight, the one that you usually use in Orfist. Well, you can run this in Prison, and it's pretty spicy because when you play this, you don't have any requirements. It's just a CB1 get a Shadow Army token. That's pretty good, right? That's pretty good, because that means if you have this on turn 2, you have a 15k beat up. And then one of the biggest problems with Prison is that, you know, you have triple drive, but again, you're still a 3 attacker deck, and your columns don't hit super high. But with this, you have a 15k booster, which can solve all your problems, right? Like this plus Rouge, that's 30k. This plus Turquoise, that's 30k. So you're hitting these decent numbers like that, and then you still run Baromagnes just because, you know, counter charges. Since this requires counterblast, you do require a bit more counter charge. But yeah, the rest of the deck is, you know, bug murders are just really good still. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's go more aggressive and, you know, just push with this eroding moonlight, right? Turn 2 eroding moonlight feels good. Doesn't interfere with anything at all, right? Doesn't interfere. Like first turn you put down the prison, second turn put down the moonlight. You're all set. You're all set. So actually kind of like this deck. I was playing with the other order before as well, just to, you know, the defensive order. One thing that's really changed my mind as well about this deck is the Dairy Violet. So before I said I like the defensive order just because it absolutely shut down turns. But with this card, you can commit it early. You play this like a Brody, commit it early, and then if they don't kill it, you could just intercept all their big rearguard attacks. But then, you know, if it's on the field, they kind of want to attack into it because it has that opportunity to just stop big attacks, right? So it kind of keeps you alive because it's just such a big threat on the field that they want to get rid of. So yeah, you just have to play this way more aggressively than your order card can, because you can't play orders on the field, and that's a solely defensive card. This is like a multi-purpose card, which is overall very, very good. So, you know, you can commit early, put it with like a Moonlight behind 25, and then later on, you know, utilize it for other things and put down better cards. So yeah, still running like 8 crit, 3 front, just because there's a lot of times I just want to trigger crit, then fronts. And then crit with the brand trigger is just like way better, right? Way better. So yeah, this is kind of the spicy text that I've been seeing and picked up from locals lists that you guys have all been doing. So this is like your big brain child, right? So yeah, let me know what you guys think of these decks. So far, basically, there's been a lot of innovations. The only big letdown, I guess, that everyone kind of knew was Phantom Blaster Dragon, and honestly, there's just, I don't know. I think that deck is kind of a lost cause because there's just really no good support for it. It needs to wait for some good cards. But the rest of the cards have been pretty surprising for me. Like every single other archetype has just gotten better, and in a good way, right? In a good way. And we're starting to see like some hybrid decks. Like just look at this one, like mixing like the Orfist cards with prison cards. I think that's pretty cool. I think that's a good thing that we're seeing, and you know, just adds more dimensions to deck building instead. And it's only the second set, right? It's only the second set. So as long as they maybe tone down some things in the future, like Bruce, Leonard, then I think we're in a pretty good spot. So let me know what you guys think about the decks. Of course, some of these decks I did go through pretty quickly because they're just pretty straightforward, right? Like Bastion, it's just Bastion, right? Or Baromagnes, nothing's changed. But if you guys want to see the deck list, I'm gonna put up the deck codes below, and you can just go to deck log and check them out. Let me know what you guys think of the decks, and I will see you guys next video. All right, hope you guys have a good time cracking all the cards and building your own decks. I can't wait to see them. All right, peace.